Welcome to today's Aquila University. We will be discussing paper to eCTD conversion. Note, we are recording this and this will be put up on our website. If you have any concerns about your name, your question, and certainly your answer showing on our website for anyone to see, you may want to disconnect now, and we will send you an email when the presentation is on our website and available for view. Much about well, and I did Aquila Solutions in 2010. We since then supported clients all over the world, especially now that a lot of the regions are moving to electronic solutions, as well as other RegOps groups that are critical to maintaining your application. So, it's a brief overview of today's topics. Why do you need to convert? What are some of the regional requirements? We'll discuss a little bit about lifecycle design and document preparation, and then go over how you need to approach your conversion from when you do future sequences. There's time at the end, and the time for questions at the end, and I hope you will join us, ask any questions then. So convert to paper. Many sponsors have been using these paper submissions for years, and they've gone through their career. They're very used to paper. Obviously, a lot of people are just comforted by physically sending out paper and are a little intimidated by electronic submissions, figuring out it can't be nearly as secure. And there are reasons. Number one, electronic submissions tend to be faster than paper. This is always true, but it is frequently true. It's usually cheaper. Again, not always, but for likely to be cheaper than most people expect. You have to. I'm sure you're aware the FDA released guidance providing a specific timeline for conversion. They will stop accepting submissions for AAs, BLAs, sort of approved products in May of next year, and INDs have until May of 2018. So what are some of the regional requirements? It's important to remember that the actual workload that you'll be under to convert is really based on what your individual region requires. Some regions technically require no work. Other regions effectively want you to resubmit what you have. It really varies depending on the region. And we'll go over two regions, the regions at the two extremes. So rules. One, in eCTD, you can never go back. In a brand new format, there's no way back to paper. And once you make a life cycle decision, a life cycle decision is what do you call the product in your metadata? How do you label things? How do you break up your documents? Are you going to only submit one type of submitting one vehicle or one dosage form, or are you going to do multiple dosage forms? How about for sites? All these are life cycle decisions. And when you make a decision and submit it, it is very difficult to impossible to undo that decision. It's critical that you plan these things ahead. And finally, your very last paper submission should tell your agency that you're going to convert. Typically, this is not required, but I've seen several sponsors buy themselves trouble because they didn't want to be bothered by sending in a single letter letting their agency know what's going on. So, the FDA. The FDA is in many ways very nice. There are no extra requirements. The FDA is very adamant about pushing people towards electronic submissions. They make it any harder than it has to be. There are recommendations. Number one, if you have an IND that you're converting, start your sequence number to match the IND submission number. And you may want to do the same thing with approved application submission numbers. This just to help keep things clear when referring to different submissions. It's not technically required, but it does make it a lot easier. 2, backbone before you convert. Talking about republishing your application, but you want to figure out where you're taking this application and how you want to structure it before you send your first submission to the FDA, your first eCTD to the FDA. Because if you don't, you'll end up making decisions and placing things in areas that in the long run don't make much sense. It will become a nightmare to maintain over the years. So what about the EMA? The requirement is use the sequence at 0. You have a requirement for a baseline sequence. That's been they've changed that from a requirement to a recommendation, and it is a strong recommendation. They really like to see a baseline sequence. Technically, you don't have to send one. Number 2, you need to track your work documents. Unlike the FDA, the EMA does have working documents that are technically outside of the application. You need to make sure you're paying attention to these and that you are including the correct work document when you update the source document in your eCTD. Even have it's now in a different structure than the original submission, you need to make sure you've got the correct document for the work instruction when you're updating it. And the recommendation is to plan your backbone before you convert. So let's discuss some life cycle design. Look clear, it is dangerous to transition without planning. Do it. And if you're very early in your application, perhaps you've just sent out your initial application, or you've got your IND, a phase 1 IND with 1 or 2 updates, you can probably get away without much planning. But if you've had any sort of back and forth communication with the FDA, if you're dealing with any documents that have been updated since the original submission, you'll regret not spending the time to plan ahead. So the plan allows you to put the documents, to make sure you're putting the documents where you need to go. A lot of think that this is obvious, but designing your application, your eCTD, is as much art as science and regulation. There are definitions on where things go, but But like so many things, different documents may talk about two different things at once in the same document. Which one do you put it under? Having a plan lets you figure out where you want to put that document before you need to update it, so you don't have to make that decision on the fly when you're under a time crunch for sending in an update. You maintain consistency by having the plan in place. You know how you're going to name everything. You know how you're going to format your electronic documents. All that stuff that really makes your application look and feel far more professional will be integrated and prepared for through your lifecycle design and your backbone plan. Finally, like I said earlier, you can lock yourself into a position. Once you make a decision, it can be very, very difficult to reverse it. And by planning ahead, doing sort of a what-if analysis, you can figure out how you want to name things, how you want to place things, so that you aren't blocking yourself out of an easy way to do something in the future, and then find yourself stuck maintaining things in a way that will triple your work. So what are the primary steps? Your full review of the history of your application. This is not just the submission numbers, this is anything sent to the FDA. And you want to start with your initial application and look at every submission and see what changed in that submission. You identify future plans. Are you adding a new site? Are you planning on adding a new formulation? These are that you should keep in mind when designing your backbone, just like you would keep them in mind when you're doing your clinical studies early on, before initial application. It's the same sort of concept. And I personally strongly recommend you create the actual XML backbone. It's so much easier to reference. This is not something that you send in. This is for your internal use only. But you to do an easy cut and paste and just reference it when you're creating your submission. Instead of having to guess what to name it and what to name everything, where to go, you just refer back to your mock backbone, and you just do. It makes living with this application bearable. Prepare the documents. First, eCTD is, first of all, a eCTD format. This means that if you are using a legacy format, you need to change your you need to rework your documents into a eCTD format. This is very difficult and time-consuming, but the fact that it's difficult and time-consuming makes it that much more critical. Basically, take all your documents and break them down into the smallest components you can. And you take those components and drop them into the backbone where they need to go. All the while you are tracking where they came from. That way you can easily reference them when you need to update your submission. And you move the content, preferably if you have CTD templates in there. If not, you don't have to. You just drop your documents into the folder structure that the backbone is referencing. So you've created an eCTD with no bookmarks and links. This is really saves you a lot of time in the long term. So our recommendation is, at this stage, don't worry about links and bookmarks. The only exception is if you're going to submit a baseline sequence to your region in this conversion because you're planning on going into a new region. if you're doing, if you lived in the U.S. for 15 years and now are deciding to move into Europe, you could convert your application and do a full remediation on it, a full bookmarking and linking, and then you have an application that is almost submission ready for the EU on project. Our next recommendation is if your working documents as accurate as possible. Make sure and in this case, when I say working documents, I mean documents that you've placed into your backbone. The ones that have been broken up from the original application and your mock documents. This will save you time, it will save you effort, and it will potentially save you a lot of questions from the FDA as to why you changed things when you didn't mean to. Future sequences. With new sequences, you need to treat the draft bone as if you had already submitted it, even though you haven't. This is really what the entire point is. To make sure that you keep the operation straight. Leave a draft must still be in operation if the FDA or the EMA or whoever else has not actually seen it yet. Even if it's in your draft backbone, it's not a replace operation, it is a new operation. Just something to keep in mind, it will always be more work intensive to maintain a committed application until you've actually submitted all draft leaves. In general, you won't end up submitting a lot of your clinical work in an approved application, but you need to pay special attention to all your CMC until all those documents have been updated. Now, time, are there any questions? Just note that Aquila can help. We actually provide a specific service for converting documents, convert applications, and it can typically take, for a relatively straightforward conversion, most of the time it takes less than a month. It makes it very easy to meet the mandate if you have any concerns about it. Our next topic will be MS Word tips and tricks. We've had a lot of questions about how to use Microsoft Word, and so we're going to go over some of the most common features that regulatory authors need to know about. This is how to format your documents easily and consistently, how to handle bookmarks and captions, and what exactly are field codes. And we actually haven't decided exactly what we're going to cover, so it'd be a fun session. I hope you'll join us on the 26th. It'll be about half an hour, and will be time for questions at the end. Thanks for joining us, and have a great weekend.